It's Max Hanna here from Social Tree Global. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined today by Caspar Robson, who's heading up this marketing team at ETFS Capital. And as part of our social media and finance series, I've been able to grab Caspar, and he's going to be sharing some of his insights into how fintech companies can use social media to scale and to improve the way that they operate as a business. Caspar has an amazing track record. So if you're a fintech looking at social media, thinking about why is it important? Is it even worth it? We've got the right man for the job. So thrilled to have you on the show today, Caspar.
Thanks, Max. That was an incredible introduction. I'm not sure I'm worthy of all of those fine accolades, but yes, delighted to be joining you today.
Well, we'll leave that to the audience to judge. My first question to you, Caspar, we'll get into it. So really, if you're kind of a founder of a fintech company, there's so much going on. You're really busy. There's a lot of things you could invest in. Why, if at all, do you think social media should be a priority?
I think the simple answer is it's probably the most effective way to market to potential clients. Maybe at this point, taking a little step back, and I'm just going to quickly talk about my role, and then I'm going to use that as the basis for talking about why I think social media, and particularly LinkedIn, should be a priority for fintechs. So my role is I head up marketing at ETFS Capital. We are a strategic investor that invests in fintechs focused on the investment or asset management space. Currently, our portfolio, we have around 10 investments. So my role is a dual role. I both drive the marketing for ETFS Capital, but I also work as a strategic marketing consultant to the portfolio companies and get to work with them. And what this has done is, it complements my own experience of helping to build companies, but also I've now actively been working with the sort of fintech growth startups to help them develop their thinking around the marketing space. And I think one of the most important things is that what I've tried to do is take all of my expertise, my experience, and distill it down into some very practical advice for these firms, because, and it kind of brings it full circle back to your question. A lot of the times what we're dealing with as founders, they're at early stage of their growth, so the teams are small, they've got limited resources and budgets are tight. So, they have to think very carefully about anything that they're allocating time or money to. Now, from a marketing point of view, what I'm going to assume is that they've put the basics in place so that, they've developed their brand, they've got their logo, they've built a website, they've gone through a process of understanding of how they want to position the business, what messaging they want to use in terms of communicating it. And they're now ready to start thinking about some sort of outreach tactics. And in that situation, I think particularly LinkedIn can be an incredibly effective, both from a resource point of view, but also a cost point of view. But I would add a note of caution. It does take some effort. It is not an effort-free exercise to use something like LinkedIn effectively.
Although channels such as LinkedIn, as you say, are such an effective platform if you get it right, it does take investment of time. And what I've always found is that when you're starting out, there's obviously two ways you can launch a campaign, one through your company page and one through your individual page. And when you're starting out, a lot of what people buy into is that sort of, is the individual, is the founder or the leading team. So having your personal persona on LinkedIn is really important. But yeah, you do have to invest time. But if you invest the time in the right way, even if it's just 30 minutes a day, I think the results are going to be astonishing. But one of the questions I often have when I'm talking to people is, we're ready to launch, we've got amazing offering, amazing message, what are the limitations when it comes to social media? A lot of people, should fintechs be focusing on their website? Should they be focusing on social media? Should they be looking at the SEO? Is it one or the other? What sort of are the pillars of the wider marketing strategy that you would recommend, if you're starting out as a fintech, you should be looking at? And what are the limitations of social, do you think?
I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. You need to have a strong website. And I think increasingly is when I talk about a strong website is, at the end of the day, websites are generally only as good as the story that you're trying to tell. And it's amazing how many times I think where websites go wrong is that people haven't really thought through what story they want to tell. And they haven't seen it from the perspective of the audience that they're trying to influence and engage with. So either what they're trying to do, and a lot of the times fintechs, as to be expected, they come from a technology point of view. So a lot of the time they want to explain what it is that they do, but there's no sense of, what problem are they trying to solve? What benefits do they offer? Why should anyone care? Because before anyone is going to invest time in understanding the detail of your amazing solution, they're going to want to know that it's relevant for them. And they're going to want to know that it is a better option than anything else they could choose marketplace. So the website really needs to speak to that. And in a sense, what you do on LinkedIn complements that and supports that. From our own experience, what we find is, we start off assuming that there would be a lot of crossover, that there would be a lot of movement between, if people were starting to follow, particularly if you've got a company page on LinkedIn, that they would then look at your website. What we've actually found looking at the stats is that crossover is actually quite small. It's less than 10%. So our recommendation to fintech companies is you need to run one digital strategy. In other words, you're saying the same thing in both places, and you have a content pipeline that underpins both, a common content pipeline. But what you do is you have activity on both simultaneously, because that way I think you get the best of both worlds.
Again, would agree with that. And a lot of the campaign work we do here at Social Tree is integrating your social presence and your website campaigns, because social, if done right, can drive a lot of traffic to your website. And if you don't have both pillars, then ultimately you're going to have a disjointed strategy. And there are great tools you can do with social media, in my experience, with websites, putting things like tracking pixels on your website, so you can do retargeting, if that's right for your company, both on LinkedIn or Facebook. So there's a great range of tools that can make them sync together. And like you say, it's not one or the other. They should be done, in tandem. But just going back to, because obviously you work with, some really exciting fintech companies who've got some amazing goals, who are really disrupting, the industries that they operate in. But I think a lot of times people can kind of get lost in what they're really trying to achieve on social media. I think a lot of people think, I'll put a post out, got a few likes, that's great. I've ticked the social media box. But, when you're working with fintechs, what sort of goals do you think people should be working to on social media? What, in your view, do you think good looks like?
Another great question. I think, in my mind, it really comes back to really 2 points. One is building a brand, and second is generating leads, to fuel your effectively your sales process. So if we look at both of those, I think from a brand build, what's really important to understand is the difference between how you build your network for your personal profile versus how you build your network for a company page. And it's important because almost everyone that we talk to, they've all been on LinkedIn for a while. They've all got generally pretty good networks, although the pool of people who are actively posting stuff versus just engaging, liking stuff, occasionally commenting on stuff. But most of the time, most people through their personal profiles, they're really just, their engagement really is just about liking stuff. Now, when you build your personal profile, it really is a function of who you work with and who you do business with. So that you naturally, if you join a new company, you'll end up connecting to a lot of people there. If you're doing business with someone, you'll connect with them, for that purpose. So a lot of the time, your network will grow organically, and you're not necessarily doing anything, above and beyond that to grow your network. When you create a company page, I think it's a very different place. Company pages, in order to attract followers and to drive engagement, you need to actively offer something through the page. So the conversation very quickly on a company page becomes about content. What are you going to share? Because what we found is that from a company page, if all you're doing is resharing other content or liking, or liking other stuff, you'll get some traction. You might get a little bit of momentum, but you're not going to get the breakout moment that you're hoping for. It's, so what you need to have is you need to be sharing content, and you need to be sharing original content. And that content really needs to be demonstrating your expertise, your competence. It needs to be, and I think you want to avoid outright sales stuff. So, you don't want to be constantly talking about, doing sales pitches around your solution, or your technology. But what you want to do is you want to be talking to the industry and to your target audience, identifying the problems and the issues that they're grappling with, and then talking about, providing insights into, what's driving those issues and concerns. You need to be then positioning your solution, as an option, and talking about, why what you do can provide a better solution than anything else out there. And it's a little bit science, it's a little bit art, but it's not just about capturing people's attention once, it's about capturing and sustaining people's attention, which really then speaks to the need for a content pipeline.
Absolutely. And just to build on that, when we are thinking about campaigns, we usually look at the sort of 3 pillars to a campaign when you're starting out. So for us, the first pillar is, right, like you rightly said, is your content. So you've got to have good content, original content, not too salesy. I think you're completely spot on there. And then once you've got your content in place, then you're building on your sort of paid ad campaigns. So paid ads can be really successful on LinkedIn, whether you're boosting content, whether you're driving people to events, where you're putting out reports. It's the best way to gain GDPR compliant data, because you can just drive them to forms or drive them to your website. Again, building on what we were talking about earlier. So you've got your paid ad strategy, but then also your employee advocacy plan. So how do you actually get the people in your company at the heart of your story and your narrative on social media? Because social is about people, and we've always found here at Social True, and I think with a lot of the work you're doing, when you put people at the center of your content, that's when you really shine. I think finance brands and are really guilty of kind of often removing the human element from it. So often it's quite can be quite dry, it can be quite impersonal, and that was fine. That's what people thought finance was, to be really sort of corporate, ultra conservative. But now there's so many fintechs coming up disrupting the traditional way of doing things, and I think putting people at the heart of it is is super important. I know you've had some great success with that, with some of the portfolio firms that you work and the founders within those groups.
And again, I think a really insightful point that you're making there. In our space, what people want to know is that they're working with real experts. And social media and LinkedIn is a great opportunity for people to demonstrate that expertise, not in an arrogant, boastful, overbearing way. It provides a great platform for talking about the big issues facing a particular sector or industry, and providing insights and comments on it, and demonstrating that you really do understand how all of this works. And that's really important because, for firms and often the companies that the fintechs are selling into, these are big established firms. They have a choice. They can buy from any provider. What they're ultimately trying to do is buy the best solution, because it's fundamental to their own competitive advantage. And often, almost always, the people buying that service, they're experts themselves. So what they want to do is they really want to engage with and deal with other experts. And effectively, what LinkedIn can do is it can shortcut that whole process of trying to prove your competence to the audience. You can demonstrate it over time. so that when you do start, actively engaging with that client, when you get to a point where you start reaching out, if they've read some of your pieces, if they've seen some of your comments and they think, wow, this person really knows what they're talking about, that's a much better place to start a sales conversation than, who are you and what have you done and why are you talking to me?
Absolutely. And the lucky thing is so many people still do it badly in finance. So if you are doing it well, then you've reached the, the elite group there. So, I think some fantastic insights today, Caspar. I know you're a really busy man. You're helping scale multiple companies. So at a single time, as well as the ETFS Capital brand. So it'd be great to finish off. What's the future looking like for ETFS Capital, Caspar? What have you guys got planned in the pipeline for the rest of the year?
I think we're really excited about the future. I think we're in a very strong position. We are well capitalized. We have a very strong multidisciplinary team driving our business forward. And the great thing is that our chairman, Graham Tuckwell, he has a philosophy that, that often a company, the true character of a company will shine through in a period of crisis. And I think the one thing, in the crisis, the way, we're incredibly pleased and proud of our portfolio firms and how they've reacted to the crisis. And we hope they feel that they've been well supported us during this very challenging time. So I think it's given us a really great foundation. And the one thing about crisis, is that while they create huge number of challenges, they also force companies to learn a lot very quickly, and then coming out of the crisis, what they also do is they give you opportunities to do stuff that you might, in a more, so we say, benign market environment, you would never have considered doing. They create opportunities, they build resilience, and they force you to develop expertise that you wouldn't have. So, we're optimistic about the future. We have a pipeline of potential portfolio firms that we're looking at. We're always willing and able to talk to others who fit within our mandate and meet our standards, which are high. But I think ultimately coming out of this, business is going to be stronger and better, because I think a lot of what the crisis has done has really intensified shifts that were already starting to happen. So a more sustainable future, a more digital future. And I think, final comment, social media and LinkedIn is only going to get more important in time, not less.
I love that. The true culture of a company shines in a crisis. I think that's a great, a great comment there. So yeah, appreciate your time, Caspar. And if there's anyone, listening to this and you're involved in the fintech space, I urge you to follow ETFS Capital. They're putting out some great content, doing some amazing stuff in the space. And hopefully you guys found that useful. Remember to follow, our respective channels and watch out for more content in this space.